Under a morning sky that smells of coffee and unspoken choices, Evan returns to the café where last night ended in unfinished promises. The new lock is still warm when Theo's past, and a spark for chaos walks in with a smile that hides a threat. An unexpected inspection, a missing detail, and the weight of old mistakes press in until every breath feels like a decision. Either Evan and Theo claim their space or let someone else write their morning. No shouting, just charged glances, a key that changes hands, and a choice that can't be postponed. This day will test their courage to stay, to speak the truth, and to build a life where no shadow owns their dawn. I was supposed to glide through this trip, collect name badges and polite smiles, eat hotel fruit in a quiet room, and fly home with a few new contacts. Instead, the night split, 3 missed calls from my brother, a text that felt like a mistake until it didn't. Mom's in surgery, not stable. The carpet outside my door swam, its bright pattern slipping like scales. I tried to call back, busy. I tried again. Voicemail. Someone down the hall laughed. As if cheered for a game I couldn't see. I stood there with my phone lit in my hand like a flare no one noticed. I took the elevator, got out before it fully opened, and walked into New Orleans heat that held me by the throat. Music came from everywhere, a brass clapping, a stubborn happiness that made me want to push back. I moved fast, cutting across wet streets in neon, past a silver dress, sending glitter into the air like a prayer I had forgotten. At the river, I gripped cold rail and tried to breathe through fabric, thick air. The rational checklist flickered. Book a flight, call the hospital, call my brother, tell work. My thumb hovered and refused. The water folded over itself, dark on dark, and I thought of grief doing the same, heaping, swallowing, returning in the same shape with a new weight. When the nurse answered, I said son, and heard the word shatter like a plate. She was steady. They were working. No, they couldn't say more. Stay reachable, she said, as if the phone were a cord tied to my ribs. I booked the soonest flight I found sunrise, and then I stared at the confirmation until the numbers meant nothing. My brother finally called. They're still in there, he said, voice like a scraped match. We stayed on the line breathing together. The call died without goodbye. A storm rolled in and pressed the city down. Rain hit hard and warm. I walked because stillness hurt. A passing car threw a wave over me and I laughed at the wrong pitch. Grief had voltage. It buzzed under my breastbone, made my hands clumsy. I saw my mother's fingers shelling peas, then the same hands pushing me toward an airport at 18. Go, go, don't look back. And the memory slipped like soap. I wanted to call her and tell her I was coming. I wanted the ordinary miracle of her saying my name. I stopped beneath an awning where the rain fell in string, beads under the light. I counted to calm my cell phone to 100, but the numbers bent around the ache. 94, 99, 23. My chest hitched once, twice, and an unfamiliar sound broke out of me. People kept moving. The city had learned to step around private earthquakes. A door opened behind me. Warm air rolled out with coffee and something sweet. A man's voice, low and careful. Hey, you okay? I couldn't turn. If I looked up, I'd spill. I've got towels, he said, closer now, and a chair. No questions. I stared at my shaking hands. Sunrise, I thought, machines, my mother's name on a bracelet. I can't do this. I said to the rain, the river, every fluorescent hallway I hadn't yet walked. He didn't argue. He waited beside me with a patience that made space instead of stealing it. When I finally turned, I saw dark eyes under a brimmed cap, rain catching on his lashes. He held a folded towel like an offering and kept an arm's length, the way you approach a skittish animal. I took it because it gave my hands a job. He stepped back, opened the door wider, light and the small winter sounds of a calf china, frother, quiet talk spilled onto the sidewalk. I followed the heat because heat felt like proof that I still lived. Later I would call it the hinge, the quiet turn in the night where before and after pressed together and held. I wasn't brave or composed. I was soaked and reduced to simple rules. Move toward warmth, keep the phone charged, keep breathing. Outside the city kept singing as if nothing had shifted. Inside, something had quietly, like a crooked frame set down, nudged straight and left humming against the wall. I followed him into the caf like a ship pulled by a quiet current. Heat turned the rain to steam. He handed me a towel and pointed to a corner table. Sit, he said, kind more than firm. I sat. He set a mug before me, not coffee. Dark tea with smoke and orange. It helps, he said. His voice held a soft New Orleans drag that made worry sound patient. Theo, I close in 20 minutes, but you can stay while I count the register. Evan. My phone buzzed airline updates, my brother typing, stopping, typing. I didn't open any of it. Theo set down a warm square that cracked. "You don't owe me a story," he said. "We get storms inside and out." He moved through closing, hissing steamer, flipped chairs, bills counted by thumb. When the room emptied, he flipped the sign. "You got somewhere to be." I told him about the sunrise flight and the hours that scared me. He leaned on the counter. "We can fill them," he said. He charged my phone, bagged my soaked wallet, showed me a back hallway and a lopsided stool. "Base camp," he said. I laughed for the first time that night. It felt like air. My brother called. "They think it's stabilized," he said. "No promises." I gave him my flight. He asked if I was alone. I looked at Theo rinsing pitchers. "I'm okay," I said, and for a second it was true. Thunder softened. Theo took the chair across from me, leaving inches. "Tell me about her," he said. I told him about peas and porches, and how she set me down at freshman housing like placing a lamp in a safe corner. My voice steadied. He listened the way some people pray. "How about you?" I asked. "My uncle's place," he said. "He left it when he got sick. I keep it so people have somewhere to land when the sky forgets its manners." He said it like fact. Near one, he tossed me a T-shirt from Lost and Found. It hung soft and anonymous. His gaze paused, then drifted away. "There," he said. "Now you match the furniture." His smile was quick. Mine answered anyway. "I should try to sleep," I said. "Catnap," he said. "I'll keep an ear on the door." He dimmed the lights. I rested my head on folded arms, and the ache loosened enough to let me drift. I woke to a cup set down. "You were talking," Theo said, saying her name. "Sorry." He shook his head. "Don't be." His fingers rested on the table. Warmth. I checked the boarding pass. "I can drive you," he said. "Cabs get scarce." "I'd appreciate it," I said. Before we left he packed a paper bag. "Cake, water, napkins." He wrote on the side, then paused. "You'll be okay," he said. I put on wet shoes. He returned with old sneakers, a half size big. Loner program. The street smelled like rain on stone. We walked to a dented sedan with a rosary on the mirror. The radio whispered to strangers that they were not lost. We drove in hush. Street lights stitched a path. At a red light, he glanced over. "You're doing better," he said. "For now," I said. "For now counts." At the terminal, he pulled to the curb. The airport yawned. I unbuckled, then didn't move. "Thank you," I said. He nodded once. "Here," he said, passing me the bag. On the side had written a phone number and 3 words, "If you need." I traced the digits with my thumb. Our eyes met. Something steady moved between us the first tug. I stepped out. "Morning wasn't here, but close." "Text when you land," he said through the open window. I wanted to ask him to wait. Instead, I lifted the bag. "I will." He drove away. Taillights faded. The doors sighed open. Inside, I joined travelers carrying weather. My phone buzzed. A message from my brother. "She made it through. IQ." Relief rushed. I typed back with hands that finally felt like mine. I added a contact, Theo Caff. I stared at his number for a breath, then sent one word into the space between us. "Boarding." Moments later, my screen lit up. "It'll be here," he wrote. A point in the world clicked into place. Not a destination, a mark I could find by feel. As I stood in the check-in line, the bag warmed my palm like a small heater. I could smell citrus from the cake and coffee clinging to the paper, and it steadied me more than anything. Official boarding zone. The announcements, the blue uniforms moving like tides. I wasn't fixed. I wasn't falling apart either. I was a man pointed in a direction, held together by strangers and a number written in ink. I let that be enough until the doors opened and morning named itself. The plane climbed through gray like a needle pulling thread. I watched the wing cut morning light and tried not to picture hospital lamps carving the same line through my mother's night. When we landed, my phone woke furious alerts, calls, the language of emergencies. I texted my brother, "On my way." I texted Theo one word, "Landed." His reply came before the seatbelt light went dark. "I'm here. Breathe." I hadn't noticed I'd stopped. The airport moved like a slow tide. Coffee lines, rolling bags, announcements that sounded like distant weather. I let the current carry me to the curb and into a ride that smelled of peppermints. IQ spoke in numbers and thin beeps. My mother looked both unfamiliar and entirely herself, jaw set as if holding the line for us both. My brother gripped my shoulder. "She's here," he said, which meant everything and nothing. We stood, sat, stood again. Time skittered like a trapped fly. By noon, a doctor's calm words arranged themselves into a fragile safety, stabilized, watchful, cautious optimism. We were told to eat. I bought soup. I Didn't taste and texted Theo. She's stable for now. He answered, good. Eat, walk, if you shake. That's your body letting go of the night. His check-ins were ballast more than messages. Evening drained the color from the hallway. My hotel in New Orleans still held my suitcase like a sealed room. I needed clothes, chargers, a life paused mid-sentence. I booked a late flight back to retrieve everything and return at dawn. I told myself it was logistics. It wasn't. I texted Theo, back tonight for my stuff. He wrote, swing by. I'll lock up late. My brother watched me with the quiet suspicion of someone who knows when a step leads elsewhere. The night flight shuddered through pockets of air. When we touched down, the city smelled rinsed. I cabbed to the hotel, shoved clothes into a duffel, signed a checkout slip that didn't look like mine, then walked the last blocks to the caf. Theo was wiping the final table when I arrived. The place felt like the inside of a held breath. You made it, he said. 3 ordinary words landed like a hand on my back. He poured tea without asking, how is she, holding steady. Heat made honesty easy. Didn't think I'd come back so soon. He shrugged. You had a bookmark here. People return to those. He leaned against the counter, close enough that I could hear his breath over the hiss of the steamer. We let quiet arrange the room. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. Theo caught my glance and smiled like Head caught me almost sleeping in class. Come on, he said. It's nicer out front. We stood beneath the awning where last night's rain had written its name. The air held the clean ache of after storm. Streetlight gold pooled in cracks. You didn't have to wait up, I said. You didn't have to come back, he answered. In the pause that followed, I felt the strange safety of being known by someone who only knew the true parts. A bus sighed. Theo's shoulder brushed Minberly, like an accident that had made up its mind. Heat rang from that touch in a thin private bell. I didn't step away, neither did he. I keep thinking about that word, I said. Son. My voice cracked on it again. Theo leaned closer, a slow permission. That word doesn't have to carry all of it, he said. Let it be small for one night. Be a man who's tired too. I laughed, grateful. I'm good at tired. Our arms grazed again, a repeated sentence. I felt the heat of him through both sleeves. Can I show you something? He asked. I nodded. He locked the door, dimmed the lights, and led me to a wall of Polaroid. Regulars, couples, a dog in a sweater too sincere for irony. He pointed at a blank space. I save gaps, he said. Places for whatever arrives. You always expect arrivals. I try not to expect. I just leave room. He stood close enough that I caught citrus and detergent on his shirt. My shoulder fit the space his posture made as if the geometry had been solved before I arrived. Something shifted in the air like heat when a storm is thinking. I turned toward him and he toward me, not choreographed, just aligned. His breath found my cheek warm, careful, tasting faintly of tea. My own breath answered. The distance shrank until it was a choice. Evan, he said, testing my name. We don't have to do anything, he added, loosening something behind my ribs. I know, I said. I also know I don't want to pretend I don't feel this. I didn't reach for his mouth. I reached for his wrist where the pulse speaks. My thumb rested there and his breath changed. He lifted his free hand and stopped it on my ribslight, a vote rather than a claim. Warmth traveled through cotton like a secret choosing daylight. We stood that way, barely touching in 2 places and somewhere else entirely. The calf hummed. The street whispered. My body learned a new language, the alphabet of caught breath, the grammar of standing still. I have a dawn flight, I said, apology and promise at once. I know, he said. I'll drive you. We didn't move for a long minute. Restraint drew its clean line. It wasn't a wall. It was a threshold. Text me if anything changes with your mom, he said when our hands finally let go. Text me if nothing changes, I replied. We both smiled at the same small understanding. We had built a corridor between nights. He turned the lock. The street opened. We walked side by side without the need to touch to prove it had happened. At the corner he stopped. Sleep a little if you can, he said. I nodded. We didn't hug, the ache in not. Hugging was its own kind of closeness. The morning flight back to New Orleans felt different, heavier, as if the cabin carried the weight of a promise I hadn't defined. My mother's condition remained stable. My brother's texts were calm. Yet I kept checking my phone for a name that wasn't family. Theo, his last message, drive safe when you come back, glowed like a quiet dare. The city greeted me with wet heat and a faint metallic sky. I went straight from the airport to the caf, duffel still slung across my chest. Theo stood behind the counter, head bent over a ledger. When he looked up, a slow light moved across his face. You made it, he said, like we had rehearsed the line. I wanted to cross the room, but something in his eyes stopped me. He wasn't only tired, he was bracing. What's wrong? I asked. He closed the book. Before anything, there's something you should know. My chest tightened. Okay, my ex-Davidown's half this place. He's back in town. He likes to stake claims. Theo's voice lowered. He's not violent, just the kind who turns every room into a test. He came by last night after you left. A pulse of unease rippled through me. What did he want? To remind me that this calf, my life, was Ourshe's word, not mine. Theo's jaw set, but his hands trembled slightly. He saw your number on the pad by the register. He knows your name. A heat climbed my spine that wasn't attraction. You think hell? He likes to watch people flinch, Theo said. That's the harm. Before I could answer, the bell above the door cut through the room. A tall man stepped in, rain on his jacket, smile sharp enough to draw blood. David. Even without an introduction, I knew. The famous Evan, he said, voice smooth as a polished coin. Theo collects strays. I see you're the latest. I moved closer to Theo, instinct more than plan. David's eyes flicked to the space between us and settled there like a knife. Flight back already, that's devotion. I forced a calm I didn't feel. I came for my bag. David smiled wider. Careful, stranger. Theo's great at rescue missions, terrible at staying put. Theo stepped forward. David, enough? But David only leaned on the counter, gaze locking on me. You think you're the first? He builds lifeboats for people drowning, then he lets them drift. My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to hit back another part, knew he was describing a past I hadn't asked about, but had already entered. Time to go, Theo said, firmer now. He moved beside me, shoulder to shoulder. David's eyes softened into something almost kind, which was worse. You'll learn, he said quietly, then turned and left. The bell chimed again, leaving the calf too still. I exhaled hard. Is any of that true? Theo rubbed a hand over his face. Some. I do help people. Sometimes I don't know how to stay after the crisis ends. His honesty landed like a stone in a compound, and me, I asked. I don't want you to be a rescue, he said, but I don't know if I can be more. Silence stretched. Outside, rain tapped the windows in a slow, deliberate rhythm. My phone buzzed me brother, a reminder of another life waiting. I thought of my mother, of the hospital's humming machines, of the long corridor between who I was before this city and who I was becoming. I wanted to tell Theo that I could be patient, that the pull between us wasn't just circumstance, but I also heard David's words echoing like a warning. He builds lifeboats, then he lets them drift. Theo reached for my hand across the counter, then stopped halfway. I don't want to hurt you, he said. I placed my palm over his anyway. Warmth met warmth, an answer and a question. We don't have to decide tonight, I whispered. He nodded, eyes bright with something I couldn't read, fear, longing, maybe both. Text me when you get back to the hospital, he said. I picked up my duffel. The room smelled of coffee and rain, of beginnings and endings sharing the same air. At the door I turned. Theo stood motionless, a figure framed in quiet light, neither reaching nor retreating. Outside, the city glistened with fresh storm water. Each step toward the waiting cab felt like stepping across a rope bridge, every plank a choice, every sway a reminder that nothing here was built to last. I looked back once. Theo hadn't moved. I spent the ride back to the hospital replaying David's smile, the kind that said he preferred rooms with exits only he could see. My brother met me at the sliding doors with 2 coffees and a look that measured my edges. She's asking for you, he said. In IQ, she squeezed my fingers and rolled her eyes at my lie about eating. For a while, the world held. At noon, her numbers dipped, then steadied. I stepped into the hall and texted Theo before I knew I was doing it. I found him by the benches with a paper bag and rain in his hair. He hugged me with his eyes before his arms. Outside when you can, head written. I brought something. David won't be a problem today, Theo said softly. I changed the codes, asked a friend to cover. My brother called. They are taking her for scans. We went. Hours folded. Evening brought a careful update. Stable, delicate, watch the next 12 hours. He arrived with a smile that didn't belong. The famous in, David said. Theo collects strays. I see you're the latest. Not here, I said. Please, I came to apologize, he said. Boundaries, Theo answered, another time. Am only here to return what's yours. He pulled a small calf ledger from his coat and set it on the chair between us. Half mine, half his, like old times. The ledger wasn't the threat. The message was, My brother rose, protective of any room with our mother's name in it. You need to leave, he told David, calm. A guard watched. David tilted his head, calculating the audience. Sure, he said, but one thing first. He stepped close and lowered his voice. Theo loves the crisis, not the morning after. Hell walk you to the edge and wave. The words landed where fear already sat. Theo went still, as if someone had called his old name in a language he'd worked to forget. We're done, Theo said. Go. David tapped the ledger, smiled at the guard, and left like settling a bill. Ere returned, Theo watched the door the way you watch a forecast that always promises rain. I wanted to say I didn't believe David. I wanted to say belief, Wace, the point choosing was. My hands discovered they were shaking again. He was wrong, Theo said at last, about the walking away. I found his hand palm up, as if he'd been waiting with the answer turned toward me. Then stay, I said. Even if staying means silence and bad coffee, we stayed. The next hour was vending tea and second shift footsteps. A nurse told us my mother had smiled at a story on tiny flare thrown from a raft. We clung to it. Near midnight, a new threat took a smaller shape. My phone buzzed with an unknown number and a photo. The caf door, propped open, lights off, rain blowing in. A text followed, forgot to lock up, another, a selfie inside, David's grin cut by shadow, kidding. I helped, he has a key, Theo said. Or he picked the lock, he was already moving. I moved with him. Go, my brother said. I'll call if she wakes. We drove to the caf. Inside nothing was broken, but everything was slightly wrong. Salt shaker moved, frame tilted. A new Polaroid of the door taped where the blank space had been. On the counter, nice place to keep warm. Don't worry, I'll keep it safe while you're busy saving the world. He wants me to chase him, Theo said. He wants the room where I make choices to belong to him. He closed his fist around the key until his knuckles paled. No more, we changed the locks. While the cylinder turned, Theo and I stood outside beneath an undecided sky. He leaned on the brick. I stood close enough to catch his shiver. I'm here, I said, not asking the words for anything but truth. He rested his head on my shoulder, brief, like a blessing in a hallway. His breath warmed the place where my collar met skin. I believe you, he said. I want to believe myself. Inside, we set the frame straight and left the space empty. Near two, my brother texted, sleeping, numbers better. Relief hit so fast my knees went loose. Theo caught my elbow. His hand stayed a second longer than necessary, and in that second I felt the shape of a future that wasn't guaranteed and wanted it anyway. We drove back at the drop. Off he parked and turned toward me, careful. You don't owe me patience, he said. But I'm asking for it. You have it, I said, but I need one thing back. He waited. No more half rooms. If you want me in your nights, I want your mornings too. His smile didn't flash. It grew. Then let's try a morning. He looked at the glass doors, at me, at the ledger in the back seat. Text me if anything changes, he said. I will, I answered. Text me if nothing changes. I stepped out. The hospital breathed its measured breath. Behind me the car idled. I turned once more. Theo held my gaze and nodded. A promise, not yet words. As the door slid open, my phone buzzed. See you at opening. The morning we wanted had already been seen. Morning arrived like a verdict. I woke on a waiting room chair with the imprint of the upholstery climbing my cheek and a text from my brother. She's stable, sleeping. Relief loosened something old in me. Another text waited under it from an unknown number, opening at 8. Don't be late. At the curb, Theo handed me coffee and a look that asked a real question. You good to be seen, he asked. By who? By day, he said. We didn't say David's name. We just didn't give it more air. The caf felt taller as we lifted the grates. The lock clicked clean. We set chairs, bled steam, wiped the last rain from the glass. Theo touched the blank space between Polaroids and left it blank, a decision more than an absence. At 7:50, my brother texted a photo, our mother's hand on a blanket, pulse, clip glowing red. I set the phone on the counter like a candle. She's fighting, I said. So are we, Theo answered. At 8, we worked in rhythm. David entered at 8:19. He didn't make a scene. He sat near the Polaroids and pointed to the wall and then to me like wires. I brought him water ritual as armor. We're open, I said. Order or move, he smiled. A latte, he said. Theo stepped beside me. You got your apology last night. You want get the room. Rooms are just air that remembers, David said. I steamed milk, hands shaking the pitcher. David leaned over the counter. Tell him, he said to Theo. Tell him how you finish rescues. Tell him about Austin. Tell him about me. Theo closed his eyes, then opened them changed. Austin was hurricane season, he said. We built a raft. When the roof stopped leaking, he wanted a house. I had only rope. I left before I lied. With you I mistook control for care. I cleaned up storms you started and called it love. Silence rose. David smiled, small and satisfied. See, he said. I do, I answered. I see him choosing differently, and I see you trying to turn honesty into a leash. His mask slipped. You think you're the morning after. I think him not the storm, I said. That'll do. The bell rang again. A city inspector entered with a clipboard. Anonymous complaint, he said. Food safety spot check. David's smile returned like a habit. The inspection crawled through the place and paused at the sink. Where's the second sanitizer strip box? He asked. It was here last night, Theo said. Checks ran through stations, then the sink. The strips were gone. I can't pass you, the inspector said. Schedule a recheck. Regulars murmured and gathered their things. Theo's face didn't crack at set. Well, fix it, he said. Well, pass tomorrow. David stood, smoothing his jacket. Shame, he said. Opening spoiled by oversight. He looked pleased with the weather-head forecast. No, Theo said. Spoiled by pettiness to the inspector. We're closing. Card, please, to the room. Thank you. See you soon. The nurse squeezed his wrist on her way out. When the door shut and the sign turned, silence fell. Theo stared at the blank space as if the box might fall out. He did it, I said, or had someone do it. Probably, he said, but I'm the one who left the gap he could use. My phone buzzed, a photo from my brother or mother awake, 2 fingers up. I need to see her, I said. But first Theo's eyes were steady, raw. Say it, he said. I'm not a rescue you finish, I said. I'm not a test you pass. I want mornings, I want the mess. If closing today is the price of not living under his weather close, the words surprised me by fitting. Theo blinked. I don't know how to be the man who gets both, he said, but I want to learn. He breathed like a promise. I choose you, not because you need me, because I like who I am with you. Heat climbed my throat, then eased down. I stepped closer until his breath touched my cheek. He lifted his hand and stopped it on my ribslight, a vote rather than a claim. The room steadied around that point. The door opened. David leaned in. Forgot my water, he said, reaching. Theo didn't flinch. We're done, he told him, with keys with half, rooms with tests. He held out his palm. Key. David's smile tried to stay and failed. He set metal in Theo's hand. Mornings show everything. Good, Theo said. He locked the door and dropped the key in the ledger drawer, shutting it like an ending finally agreed upon. My phone buzzed again. My brother's asking for you now. I turned to Theo. Come with me. He hesitated. Family, he said. You are what I'm choosing, I answered. He grabbed his jacket, wrote a note for the door, and we stepped into day. On the sidewalk, the air felt new. We didn't touch. We didn't need to. The space between us had learned my name. Morning broke while I dozed in a hospital chair. My brother's text, she's stable, sleeping beneath it another, opening at 8. Don't be late. No name needed. Theo waited outside with coffee. You good to be seen, he asked. By day, I said, and we avoided David's name. The caf opened under a new lock, steam rising, chairs lowered. Theo touched the blank gap between Polaroids and let it stay empty. My brother sent a photo of our mother's hand-woven fingers lifted in quiet victory. I placed the phone on the counter like a candle. At 8:19 David arrived, a smile sharp as a hook. He sat near the photos and pointed to the wall, then to me. I brought him water ritual as armor. You got your apology last night, Theo said. You want get the room? Rooms are just air that remembers, David replied. He leaned closer. Tell him how you finish rescues. Tell him about Austin. Tell him about me. Theo exhaled. Austin was a storm. When the roof stopped leaking, he wanted a house. I had only rope. I left before I lied. With you, David, I called control love. Silence tightened. I see him choosing differently, I said to David, and you trying to turn honesty into a leash. The bell rang again. A city inspector entered. Anonymous complaint. Food. Safety check. Drawers and fridges past sanitizer strips were missing. I can't clear you, the inspector said. We would have to close. David's small smile said enough. Theo faced him. Spoiled by pettiness, not oversight. When the room emptied, Theo stared at the blank space. He did it, I said. Probably, he answered. A text from my brother. Our mother awake, 2 fingers up. Tears came fast. I'm not a rescue, I told Theo. I want mornings and the mess. If closing is the price, close. Theo met my eyes. I don't know how to be that man, he said, but I want to learn. I choose you. David reappeared for his forgotten water. Theo held out a hand. Key. David's smile faltered. Metal hit Theo's palm. Mornings show everything. Good, Theo said, locking the door. My phone buzzed again. She's asking for you now. Come with me, I said. Your family, Theo whispered. "You're what am choosing," I replied. We stepped into the day. The space between us already knew my name.